Welcome to Bite-Sized Podcasting, how to find your values and live by it.
Today, we're diving deep into understanding what truly matters to you. We'll explore the hidden forces that shape your choices, drive your emotions, and ultimately define who you are.
We have various insights and frameworks to explore, all aimed at helping you cut through the noise and identify your core values. This isn't really about abstract philosophy. It's about practical self-discovery that can lead to a more, well, fulfilling life.
Yeah, exactly. Get ready to unpack what makes you tick.
Okay, let's unpack this then. This whole idea of values. It can feel a bit fuzzy sometimes, can it? What are we really talking about here?
Well, what's fascinating is the intense connection between our values and our emotions. If you think about moments of really strong feeling anger, passion, frustration, often those feelings are erupting because a core value, something fundamental to you, has either been, well, upheld or maybe totally violated.
Right, like an internal alarm bell going on.
Exactly, like an internal compass, kind of constantly pointing us towards what we hold dear.
You know, that really resonated. I can definitely think of times I've felt that surge. And yeah, looking back, it almost always connects to some sense of fairness or integrity, something like that.
Precisely. And they're not just fleeting feelings. Values are powerful drivers. They're the fuel for your ambitions, the energy behind your goals.
So they answer the big questions.
Yeah, those fundamental ones. What truly matters in the long run? What's worth your time and energy? And ultimately, what kind of person do you want to become?
Okay, so values are these fundamental beliefs guiding us. How do we tell them apart from, say, just the things we need to survive, or maybe just things we happen to like?
That's a crucial distinction. Our basic psychological needs, things like social connection, belonging, those are pretty much universal. They're relatively permanent.
Okay.
Values, though, are more like the strategies we adopt to meet those deeper needs. And these strategies, our values, they can actually shift and evolve as we learn and grow.
Ah, right. So, like, the need for connection is constant, but how I pursue it, maybe valuing deep loyalty or valuing broad network, that's the value. And that
Yeah.
could change.
Aggressively. And preferences, they're even more context specific. You might prefer pizza over pasta tonight, but your value of honesty hopefully stays consistent whether you're at work or home.
hmm Values have that consistency across situations.
Yeah, ideally.
That makes a lot of sense. Now it feels like we're constantly bombarded with messages about what we should value. Advertising, social media. How does all that external noise affect what we really believe?
Oh, that's a huge factor. Think about the sheer volume of content you consume every day. So much of it subtly pushes certain values onto you, often without you even realizing it.
Right, it's like background radiation or something.
It really is. It just kind of seeps in. You see certain lifestyles, certain achievements constantly highlighted.
And you start thinking, maybe I should want that too.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to develop the ability to distinguish, to sort of separate the values you've inherited from culture, family, society, from those you've consciously examined and chosen for yourself.
That self-awareness piece again, it seems crucial.
Absolutely key in this whole process.
Okay, so how do we even begin to make sense of all these different potential values? Is there like a map or framework? I've heard there's research on universal values.
Yes, definitely. Some really insightful work based on extensive cross-cultural research suggests there are about 10 core human values. These seem to show up pretty much everywhere.
Okay.
The key thing isn't that everyone has different values, but that we prioritize these 10 differently. So the relative importance varies hugely between people and cultures.
Right. So what are these 10, roughly?
Well, they're often grouped. You have self-enhancement values, things like achievement, striving for success, and power, like social status or control.
Yeah.
Then there's conservation. This includes respecting tradition, valuing security, both personal and societal, and conformity, sort of fitting in and following rules. Opposite that, you have self-transcendence. This is about looking beyond yourself. It includes universalism, caring for the welfare of all people, and nature and benevolence, which is more about kindness and helping those close to you.
Caring for others versus focusing on yourself.
Kind of, yeah. And then there's openness to change. This involves stimulation-seeking excitement, novelty, and self-direction, which is about independence, freedom, choosing your own goals.
And the 10th?
Ah, yes. The 10th is hedonism. Basically, the pursuit of pleasure and sensual gratification. It kind of stands a bit on its own, but relates to both self-enhancement and openness.
That's quite a map. It's
Yeah.
fascinating that these themes pop up everywhere. You mentioned tensions. How do they relate?
Yeah, the way these values are often visualized is in a circle. And this isn't random. The arrangement highlights the natural conflicts and harmonies.
Conflict.
Yes. For example, the values related to openness to change, like seeking novelty and being independent, are often in direct tension with conservation values, which emphasize stability, tradition, and security.
Ah, okay. Wanting to venture versus wanting safety. I feel that sometimes.
Exactly. Or the tension between self-enhancement, focusing on your own success and status, and self-transcendence, focusing on the welfare of others.
Right.
But values next to each other on the circle tend to be compatible. Like valuing tradition often goes hand in hand with valuing security. Understanding these push and pull dynamics within yourself can explain a lot about internal conflicts.
That circular idea, the push and pull, that really clarifies things. Are there other useful ways to think about our core values or ultimate aims?
Absolutely. Another perspective looks at values through the lens of psychological well-being. What are the key ingredients for a flourishing life?
Okay, like fundamental goals.
Sort of, yeah. These are sometimes called terminal values, things worth striving for in themselves. There are 6 dimensions often highlighted.
What are they?
First, self-acceptance. Basically, liking yourself, warts and all. Then positive relations with others, having strong, trusting, reciprocal relationships.
That makes sense.
Third is autonomy, feeling independent, self-determining. Fourth, environmental mastery, feeling competent, able to manage your life and the world around you.
Feeling capable.
Exactly. Fifth, purpose in life, having goals, a sense of direction, feeling your life matters. And sixth, personal growth, continuing to learn, develop, realize your potential.
Those all sound like really important foundations for a good life.
They really are. And thinking about which of these feel most important to you, or maybe where you feel a gap, can point toward your core values.
It's interesting layering these different frameworks. Now, what about ancient wisdom? I remember something about Aristotle and virtue, finding a middle ground.
Yes, Aristotle.
Huh.
His idea of virtue, which is essentially a value in action, was all about finding the golden mean. It's the sweet spot between 2 extremes, which he called vices.
So, not too much, not too little.
Precisely. Take courage. The virtue of courage isn't being fearless, that's recklessness, one extreme, and it's not being paralyzed by fear, that's cowardice, the other extreme. Courage is the balanced middle.
Like finding the right amount of fear and acting despite it?
Exactly. Or think about generosity, the mean between being stingy and being wastefully extravagant. This really emphasizes that living your values isn't always about maximizing one thing. It's often about finding the right balance.
So our values aren't just isolated principles, they all interact, like a system.
Absolutely. Think of them as an interconnected network. They influence each other, sometimes supporting, sometimes counterbalancing. And the ideal balance in that network, that's really individual. It depends on your personality, your life stage, your experiences.
That makes me think about relationships. It feels like so many disagreements, when you dig down, are actually about clashing values.
You've hit on such a critical point. Those surface arguments about money, chores, how to spend free time, they are so often just symptoms of deeper underlying differences in what each person fundamentally prioritizes.
Like, one person values security and saving, the other values experiences and spending.
Exactly. Or one values spontaneity, the other values planning and predictability. Recognizing these underlying value clashes can actually build empathy. You start to see why the other person feels so strongly, even if you don't agree.
It shifts it from there being difficult to, okay, they just value something different here.
Precisely. And it's worth remembering, shared values don't mean identical values. Sometimes complementary values can make a relationship stronger where differences actually balance each other out.
That's a hopeful way to look at it. What about things like travel? I've heard travel can really test a relationship.
Oh, absolutely. Travel, or any shared intense experience, acts like a pressure cooker for values. Suddenly you're out of your routine, navigating unfamiliar situations, making joint decisions constantly.
About money, time, risk.
All of it. It can quickly reveal fundamental differences in things like adventure versus comfort, planning versus spontaneity, even punctuality or cleanliness, things you might not notice day to day.
Yeah, I can see how that would bring things to the surface fast. Maybe a good, if potentially stressful, way to learn about someone.
It can be very revealing. That's why having those conversations, gently exploring core values early on in important relationships, friendships too, not just romance, can save a lot of potential conflict later. You want to know if you're broadly rowing in the same direction.
This brings up another question for me. We talked about universal values, but how much is just cultural? Are values fundamentally relative?
That's a huge debate,
Yeah.
and there's compelling evidence for cultural influence. Think about the work of anthropologists like Margaret Mead. Her studies in places like Samoa and New Guinea really challenged the idea of universal absolute
How
values.
so?
She observed societies with vastly different norms and priorities, suggesting that many values we take for granted are actually learned, absorbed from our specific cultural context.
Hmm.
What's highly valued in one culture might be barely considered in another.
So things like competitiveness or cooperation or how much individuality is prized.
Exactly. Those can vary dramatically. Her work really encourages us to question, which of my values feel deeply intrinsically mine, and which have I perhaps absorbed without much critical thought from my surroundings?
It makes you reflect on your own assumptions.
It does. Even personal experiences like living abroad can suddenly illuminate your own cultural conditioning. You might discover a non-negotiable value you never knew you had, like a need for direct communication, or maybe realize that something you thought was vital, like strict punctuality, is actually more flexible for you than you thought.
That's so true. You don't realize how culturally ingrained some things are until you're outside that culture.
Another way to think about cultural differences is through frameworks like the grid group model. It suggests cultures vary along two main axes: grid, which is about the level of rules and hierarchy, and group, which relates to social cohesion and belonging.
So different cultures emphasize different combinations of rules and group identity.
Right. A high grid, high group culture might strongly value conformity and tradition. A low grid, low group culture might prioritize individual autonomy and achievement much more. It helps explain the diversity of value systems across the globe.
Okay, we've talked about identifying and understanding values, but is it possible to overdo it? Can you focus too much on one value?
Oh, absolutely. That idea of balance is key.
Hmm.
Overemphasizing a single value, even a positive one, can definitely create problems and imbalance in your life.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Someone might value family loyalty above all else. That sounds good, right? But if taken to an extreme, it could lead them to compromise their personal integrity, maybe cover up for a relative's wrongdoing, or neglect their own needs entirely.
Right, sacrificing other important things.
Or consider someone who over-indexes on autonomy and independence. They might push people away, struggle with vulnerability, and end up feeling isolated and lonely, missing out on the benefits of connection. It comes back to that idea of the golden mean, finding the healthy balance.
It's a constant balancing act then. Now, where do these values even originate? Is it all learned, all nurture, or is there some nature involved?
That's the classic nature versus nurture question. Research in moral psychology, like the moral foundations theory, suggests there's likely a genetic component, an innate predisposition towards certain moral concerns.
Innate moral foundations. Like what?
The theory proposes about 6 core foundations that seem to be wired into us to some degree. Things like care, harm, sensitivity to suffering, fairness, cheating, concerns about justice and rights,
Yeah.
loyalty, betrayal, valuing group cohesion, authority, subversion, respecting tradition and legitimate authority, sanctity, degradation, valuing purity, avoiding contamination or disgust,
Yeah.
and liberty, oppression, resisting domination.
Wow. Okay, so we all have these, but maybe to different degrees.
Exactly. And interestingly, research suggests different political leanings might prioritize these foundations differently. For example, liberals tend to place a very high emphasis on care and fairness, often interpreted as equality. Conservatives also value those, but often give greater weight to loyalty, authority, and sanctity, and may interpret fairness more in terms of proportionality.
So it's not that one side lacks certain values, but the weighting is different.
That seems to be the idea, and it's presented neutrally, just as an observation of differing patterns. It helps explain why political disagreements can feel so visceral. They often tap into these deeply held, somewhat intuitive moral sensitivities. Trying to argue purely logically might miss the emotional core tied to these foundations.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not just about policies, but about these underlying moral feelings. Okay, this has been incredibly insightful. Let's make it practical. How can someone listening right now actually find their own core values? Any exercises?
Yes, definitely. There are some great thought experiments. One is the desert island visualization. Imagine you're alone on an island, all your basic survival needs met. Food, water, shelter, all sorted. What would you choose to do with your time, free from any social pressure or obligation?
No one to impress, nothing you have to do.
Exactly. What activities would you pursue just for their own sake? This helps reveal your intrinsic motivations and values, stripping away the external shoulds.
I like that one. What else?
Another powerful one, maybe a bit more confronting, is the funeral test.
Okay.
Ask yourself, what do I genuinely want people to say about me at my funeral? What qualities, contributions, ways of being would I hope they remember? What kind of legacy matters most?
Wow. That really cuts to the chase, doesn't it? Focuses on the long view.
It does. It forces you to think about ultimate impact and what truly matters in the grand scheme of your life.
Right. Any others?
One more, maybe more grounded in daily life. Look to frustration. Pay attention to your pet peeves. What consistently annoys or frustrates you about other people's behavior or situations you encounter.
My pet peeves. How does that help?
Those irritations often signal a violated value. If inefficiency drives you crazy, maybe competence or effectiveness is a core value. If people cutting in line infuriates you, perhaps fairness or integrity is really important to you.
Huh. So my annoyances are actually clues. That's a clever way to look at it.
Our negative emotions can be surprisingly useful data points.
Okay, so let's say we use these exercises, we get a clearer sense of our values. What if we realize we want to change them? Or maybe just shift the priorities? Is that even possible?
That's a really interesting question. Changing core, deeply ingrained values wholesale. That's probably quite difficult, maybe not even desirable in some cases. But shifting the emphasis, the priority you give to certain values in your personal hierarchy, that seems more achievable.
So not necessarily becoming a totally different person, but maybe consciously choosing to elevate, say, compassion over achievement, or vice versa.
Exactly. More like fine-tuning the balance. And sometimes, major life events can trigger more significant shifts.
What kind of events?
Often, it's significant negative experiences, trauma, loss, serious illness. These can fundamentally shake your worldview. They might expose the limitations of your previous values, show where they failed you, creating a kind of void.
And that void needs to be filled with new meaning.
Yes, often leading to a reevaluation and reprioritization. It's not something anyone would seek out, obviously, but it can sometimes lead to what's called post-traumatic growth.
Growth coming out of trauma.
Yeah. People can report positive changes afterwards, stronger relationships, new possibilities, greater personal strength, a deeper appreciation for life, sometimes spiritual development. It shows our capacity to find new meaning and reorient our values even after profound difficulty.
That's a powerful reminder of resilience. You mentioned cognitive dissonance earlier, that clash between beliefs and actions. How does that relate to changing values?
It's central, really. When our actions don't align with our stated values, we feel that uncomfortable dissonance. We're motivated to reduce it.
So if I say I value environmentalism but drive a gas guzzler, I feel weird about it.
Probably, yeah. And you'll likely try to resolve that tension. Either you'll downplay the importance of environmentalism, it's not that big a deal, my contribution's tiny anyway, or you'll change your behavior, maybe start biking more, or plan to get a more efficient car.
Okay.
What's fascinating is that often, values follow actions. If you consistently act in line with a value you aspire to hold, even if it feels a bit forced initially, your beliefs and feelings tend to gradually align with that behavior.
So fake it till you make it can actually work for values.
To some extent, yes. Acting as if can reshape your internal landscape over time. But you need to be mindful which value is your action actually serving. Sometimes we rationalize actions to fit a less important value.
Right. So consistently acting generously might actually make you feel more generous over time.
That's the idea. Self-confrontation is also key, consciously reflecting on inconsistencies in your reasoning. And sometimes, creating external incentives, little rewards or systems, can help nudge your behavior until the internal shift happens.
It seems like behavior change is a really powerful lever for value change. So once we have this clarity and maybe we've done some shifting, how do we actually live by these values day to day? What does that look like?
It comes down to developing what you might call practical wisdom. This involves, first, that ongoing self-awareness, knowing your values. Second, emotional regulation, managing your feelings when values clash or get challenged.
Okay.
Third, actively monitoring your network of values, making sure you're not overinvesting in one at the expense of others. And finally, recognizing that sometimes negative feelings are just the price of honoring a higher value.
Like feeling disappointed you missed a party because you prioritized studying for an important exam that aligns with your value of achievement.
Exactly. That disappointment is okay. It's a sign you made a choice. based on your priorities.
Yeah.
It's about accepting the trade-offs.
This has been such a rich discussion. If we were to boil it down, what are the key, maybe 80-20 takeaways for someone wanting to really understand and live by their values?
Okay, let's try. First, gain clarity. Use reflection, use those exercises, figure out what your core values actually are.
Know thyself. Got it.
Second, understand the trade-offs. Be conscious of what you're sacrificing when you prioritize one value over another. Nothing comes for free.
Right. Every choice has a cost.
Third, look at friction in relationships as potential value clashes. Approach these with curiosity and aim for respect, even if you don't agree.
See conflict as data.
Kind of, yeah. Fourth, distinguish higher from lower values for you. This helps guide decisions when things get tough. Fifth, cultivate practical wisdom, that ongoing monitoring and balancing act. It's not static.
Keep checking in.
Sixth, align your environment. Surround yourself with people and influences that support, or at least don't actively undermine, your core values. Seventh, manage your emotions in relation to your values. Understand the triggers, interpret them wisely.
Don't let emotions hijack your values.
Right. And eighth, maybe the most actionable, remember, values often follow action. If you want to embody a value more, start acting that way consistently. Oh, and maybe a bonus ninth, prioritize connection in relationships over just being right.
That's a great list. Really practical stuff, preparing for this, reflecting on my own values. It's definitely made me realize some things, like maybe benevolence is higher up for me than I consciously thought.
It's a revealing process, isn't it? That need for diversification, too, not putting all your value eggs in one basket. And realizing that often when people disagree strongly, it's not that they have completely alien values, but they're just ranking shared human values differently. That understanding can foster a lot more tolerance.
Absolutely. Well, we hope this deep dive has given you some valuable insights into understanding and living by your values. This is definitely an ongoing journey of self-discovery, so keep exploring what truly matters to you.
See you soon with another guide like this.